What's up, all my friends in podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the Conquer Athlete podcast with myself, Ryan Bucciantini, and the one and only GOAT, Jason Leydon.
Wow.
Bringing you guys a solid episode on the Coach RX podcast network, which, if you've caught our last couple episodes, we're going to keep plugging it. Definitely check it out. Putting out some pretty awesome stuff over there. And Candace will yell at us if we don't do it. So we got to make sure to do it.
Shout out to Candace. I got to give Candace a shout out every time.
Every time. But yeah, seriously, guys, I know we keep kind of joking about it. Check it out. There's some awesome, if you're an athlete, coach, there's some great resources over there. And it's free. So can't beat that. But today, we are diving, whatever you want to call it, into some load management principles for CrossFit, right? We see big insurgents of...
Can I pause you for 1 second? I feel like I'm a 2-year-old. You know, like Family Guy or like South Park, like you say something that has like an innuendo to it, and then like there's someone that just starts laughing at it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's my entire day. Like you're like load management, and I'm just giggling in my head.
Listen.
Thinking of all the things I could say, but I don't know if I should.
That thought crossed my head when I was thinking of a topic or a title, and I couldn't stop giggling. So I get it. But get your minds out of the gutters.
I want to say so many things right now.
I mean, you can say it.
Today's podcast is on how to manage big load.
I mean, depending on the template you're doing, you're probably taking big loads.
Guys, get your minds out of the gutter. We're talking about volume of loads.
Yeah, so guys, that's a topic today. Lots of, before Jay derails me again, you know, there's a lot of templates. Templates seem to be everywhere. And with templates comes unnecessary volume. It comes with under prescription of volume because none of it's individualized to you. So I think it's a topic that's near and dear to Jay and I, and something worth tackling because under prescription is gonna, more times than not, cause a lack of progress, and overprescription may give you a little bit of progress, but is also the fast track to blowing yourself out. So that's what we're going to dive into is load management. And off we go.
And off we go. You know, when you talk about templates, I think of two things that people need to understand. Generally, templates are built around two formatted principles. The first one is one client, right? And this is what we've seen to be very popular. And I'm going to say inside the sport of CrossFit because the one client template is what's been standardized, meaning a coach will program for one person, and then that template or that program is what's put out as a template that everybody else follows. Like, hey, follow along with Ryan Bucciantini's training program, right? The problem with that is that you're not that person. So if that program is built with specific principles around volume, intensity, fatigue management, you know, training blocks, periodization plans, that should be built all for that person. The problem with that is that you're not that person. So if that person is someone that's set up to handle a lot of volume and or a lot of intensity, double sessions, triple sessions, whatever it might be, then that's going to completely smash you. And yeah, if there's 20,000 people on it, it might work for a few people, but what's the percentage of people that's really working for? Like 1% of the total population that's on it, right? Or you're going to get extremely hurt. Or on the flip side, you might be someone that needs something that's a lot more than what that program is offered for or has in store. The other style of template that you see a lot is based around the coach's average. So the coach is going to create an avatar, right? Who's the average person that they want to build this for? What does this person look like? And then it's built around that. I think that's more popularized in other training modalities like hypertrophy program, bodybuilding programs, things like that. The problem with that is that what if you don't fit inside that average of person that they created? Like you're not the average. So if you don't fit within inside that avatar, then at some point, somewhere along the line, you're going to become derailed, right? Lack of progress, lack of attention to detail, lack of progression for you. So that's a challenging thing with templates. And sure, if you just start off and you're new and you don't have a big training age, then the law of average training template principle will probably work for you. It's going to get you somewhere along the lines as long as you have the proper ability to start wherever that template is, right? Like if you'd ever back squat before, the 5-3-1 training method probably isn't appropriate for you to back squat. You probably want to work on some single leg work and then build up strategically, right? So that's what I'm talking about, where if you're starting at the right point. Now, if you're following a template that's built for a games level athlete and you're in the sport of CrossFit, well, if you don't fit within inside that person's parameters and you probably don't, then that program is going to be pretty hard for you to continue to progress on. And yet, sure, you're going to make gains. Like if you do something new and you're exposing yourself to lots of stimulus and volume and skill acquisition, you're going to see progress. But at some point, it's going to slow down and stop, or you're going to run the risk of really derailing yourself to overtrained or injury, right? So that's what we talk about from a template perspective, to give you guys a fresh idea of where and why we think templates can get tricky. But again, we're not bastardizing templates. We're not saying that they're terrible, because they're not. Like, we all follow some form of a template at some point. We're saying if you have specific goals to reach, the best way to go about it is from an individualized track, because of these two templated principles that aren't going to follow into a specific goal in mind. That makes sense.
This is where, yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And hopefully people don't see the topic and they're like, they're just going to bash, they're just taking an opportunity to bash templates again, which we are, but we're going to expand on that just a little bit. So there's obviously a huge population within, athletes within the sport who are in class settings who follow templated programming. And that's where I thought we could kind of take this is, you have an affiliate owner who's writing for more than likely a huge spectrum of athletes, where you have the people that are still all about the sport, want to get better at the sport specifically. And then you have GPP people, and without running different tracks, right? Like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 within a specific day. How can you, or how have you I've written your program in a specific way that accounts for individualization within a templated program, right? Like, I think there's an art to that. And I want to know how you have approached that, because I've done it, and you got to get creative with the words you use and what you're including in the program to do it.
That's very challenging to do, because a lot of people become insistent on doing what's written or what's on the whiteboard, right? It's like this sense of failure, this sense of letting the coach down, this sense of not being involved with what everyone else is doing, the FOMO feel. Like, there's so many psychological factors that we can go down as far as why that hard to play a role. So it becomes tricky with coaches and owners or affiliate programmers to put that together. And what I try to do is I go back to what I just talked about. I have the law of average that I utilize inside the gym. So if I'm creating a template, I look at the average male and average female that comes into my facility, and also not just who comes in my facility, but who's my ideal clientele. Who's the person that I consistently see in here, comes to the events, functions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a person that I'm creating this average male, female for, that I write the program for. Now, based off that law of average, I still factor in my own biases around training methodologies and what I think people need to be doing, because that philosophy of mine may not fit this law of average person, but I'm taking my methodology and applying it to the average that I've created in my mind from a programming perspective for the facility. Now, based off that, I'm going to create pretty fluid 5-week training blocks. And I'll kind of get to your question in a second, but I create these 5-week training blocks because inside a facility, the membership is so transient, right? You have people that come 5 days, 2 days, 1 day, 3 days, 4 days. You have people starting, people who've been there for 18 years. So it's how can I create this landscape, this environment that can progress people in or challenge people. So the individualization from what we put together comes down to a lot of discussions about people understanding training efforts, training principles, and how and why we're trying to progress certain things. So then from a prominent priority aspect to the training block, we can look to create individualization by people just understanding how they can progress week to week through the intensity or volume to drive an adaptation for them based on how they're feeling the stressors and what their body can handle. Now that still seems pretty averaged out, but it's a way that each person can look at it. Like if we're doing a back squat, heavy light contrast set where I might say, I don't prescribe a lot of weights. That's another way I try to individualize it. But let's say we're doing a back squat RPE of 8 for 4 reps, contrasted with squat jumps for 10s, right? And then a rest. I'm going to try to individualize that by having to make sure the coaches talk to each person, each knowing that what that RPE of 8 should feel like for them, for the 4 reps, what their thought process is and how we're going to progress that. But also talking about the squat in and of itself and making sure they know, hey, the back squat may not be right for everybody, right? So if you have this happening, if you have this issue, if you have tight hips, tight ankles, if your back sore, here's how we should be adjusting it. Here are movement principles that you should be thinking about it. Ideally, what we're trying to create is this autonomy inside the members where they can come in if they've been in for a while, see the program and understand where we're going with it, because we're talking about where we're trying to go with it over the 5-week block, and know from an exercise selection standpoint if that selection of exercises is appropriate for them or what they should be adjusting to based off where they are inside their training life cycle and how their body's feeling. So that's a big piece of how we go about it from a strength perspective. Now, to me, it gets a little trickier when we get into the conditioning part, the mixed modal part, because that is where the FOMO or the community aspect really plays a role with people of, hey, this person's doing that, I want to be doing that. You know, my shoulder hurts, but it says pull-ups. I think I can still do pull-ups, type thing that you're always kind of fighting with people. And we try to address that as much as we can. And for us, the biggest thing from an individualization perspective with inside the training templates for the facility lies within fatigue management and exercise selection. And if I feel that if I can get my athletes to understand those two things, then that's a better way to get people to individualize around the principle of that day, right? From an exercise selection standpoint, an adjustment and an intensity adjustment. It is challenging. It's very challenging to do, but it's something that we continually work on with our coaches from a discussion standpoint with our class members, right? And some of that happens in the very beginning of just pulling people into a huddle, having a conversation with them about how they're feeling and what's going on. We all know it as coaches, right? The simple question of, hey, what's up, Jack? And all of a sudden you feel like you're a psychiatrist and the person's sitting on your couch, right? Telling your life story. So you can get a lot out of your members. People's natures, they want to share. They want to, I'm not trying to say misery loves company, but that saying is because people love to express and share for the most part what's going on to get sympathy or empathy or support or backing, right? So you can get a lot out of individuals from just having simple conversations with them. And then once you can gather where they're at and you're someone that understands different communication methods, then you can individualize stuff more, right? If you pull people in a circle, like, hey, Ryan, what's up? How's your day going? And you're kind of like looking down, you're mumbling, you're quiet, kind of like shaking your head a little bit. It's like, all right, something's going on with this dude. He may not want to share it, but let me talk to him about adjustments of workouts based off of he is feeling beat down and worn out, right? And that's where we try to tackle it. What about you?
I mean, I've tried a bunch of different things. So I've tried giving athlete avatars. Like I'll give 3 different avatars, and at the beginning of the block, I'll put up a video and I'll be like, here's the intention of the block. Like, here's the big focal points. Here's what we're going to try to improve over this next training cycle. Go ahead, look at these descriptions, and I want you to segment yourself within an athlete or within an avatar. And within that, I make kind of like minor differences, or I give either different exercise selections or I'll give different rep prescriptions, right? Like someone who's only been training for, a couple months, maybe we're doing 10s with goblet squats. And then we're progressing up to front squats or like whatever it is. And as we start moving, it's as easy as, novice or beginner, intermediate, advanced. And I'm still writing prescriptions within the average of the gym from an exercise selection standpoint. But it gives an opportunity for individualization and kind of works. We get the opportunity to make some individual change for the athlete where they're at currently right now, but still fit within, the class flow of it all. So everyone's still working off the same clock or all that. That's worked really, really well. Or I give priority days where I'm like, all right, for the training this week, if you really want to stick with the intention of the training block, you're going to want to come on these days. And then usually what I'll do, because I try to balance this idea of like sport and lifestyle, like why the fuck are we actually in the gym if we're not out in the world doing cool things? It's like, if you're not going to show up, I would rather you not show up on this day because, this is going to be a lighter training day, call it like a regen or a rehab day within the week. And I would rather you go out in a hike or go paddleboarding or go do something that like fills your cup that's still somewhat recovery in nature. But we're actually super receptive to that. But I think it also comes down to what is the culture of the gym? What are you prioritizing as a gym? What is your message as a gym around your program design style?
Yeah.
You know, like if everything
Yeah.
is performance driven, then the conversation is like, hey, you should really be in here as many days a week as you possibly can. If you're more about life longevity, doing cool stuff outside the gym, you can have a little bit more autonomy with what you write and like push people or prompt people to like actually get out and do things.
Yeah. So, okay, from a gym perspective, how best do you manage loads?
The best, my friend. The best. I like reps in reserve personally. I've played with a couple different blocks of training where like I actually won't prescribe reps and I'll prescribe load or, you know, like here's the weight we're going to use. And then based on the type of athlete you are, you're going to work to this 2 reps in reserve. So kind of looking for, you know, male female differences. Like some can handle load a little bit better. Some can handle volume a little bit better. And so I've written it that way where they kind of tailor the training day to how they're feeling specifically. And then I'll just adjust that RIR, which we can argue about how accurate RIR is and like training, like how well people understand their bodies. But for the most part, dealing with the law of averages, it actually works pretty well. And if you take the time to actually coach people and explain to them the feeling that they're supposed to feel, it works more times than not. I think a big problem in most gyms is the explanation of stimulus. And I think in a lot of programs, you may see it written on the whiteboard, like you may see RPE 8, but the coach may not do a good enough job actually talking about the nuance of an RPE 8. And that really comes down to what's your class flow like, what as an owner or a head coach or whatever, what kind of emphasis are you putting on the whiteboard brief? You know, you know, now we're in a different realm of conversation, but I think a lot of coaches use it for announcements and welcomes and this is what we got going on. We got Murph in a month, all this other bullshit, where I think coaches should realistically cut that down and spend more time talking about the goal intention of the session. I think it builds buy-in, it creates investment on the athlete side. And when they understand what it is we're actually trying to accomplish, they make smarter decisions and they give more effort because they know it's part of the progression of what it is that we're trying to accomplish within that training block. I have this saying, I kind of say like, I genuinely want every athlete to fire me and then be able to walk into another gym, look at the program and be able to be like, okay, this is how I could adjust this for me. I think that's a big part that we don't talk about is the education of our group class athletes. It's not just come and do the thing. It's like we can take more away from this hour than just doing these things, these exercises.
You know, I think that's another topic with something that's important to understand. Is like we as coaches, to me, we have a due diligence to create autonomy within inside the athletes and people that we come in touch with, right? Because that's obviously a big issue with people, which is training, exercise, fitness, eating right, lifestyle, mindset for mental strength. Those are all issues. But it's like, what are we doing to really educate people on how not to become codependent with inside other people? And whether it's a fear of losing business or a fear of that, it's almost like you're not going to lose business. They're going to become more attached and drawn to you, in my opinion, by giving them that. And it's something that's extremely powerful to do. And to me, it's almost one of the highest levels of being a coach. And that's giving people the ability to coach themselves and understand how to do it. It's like I look at like my son now, who's 13, and I'll sometimes have him lead stuff all the time with inside like youth trainings or teams or like stretching protocols or training protocols and all this stuff. And it's awesome to have people be able to do that from your teachings.
I love that. I ran just out of the blue. I was like, I want to see how this is going to go. And normally, like at all the gyms that I've either coached at or owned, it's always a coach-led warm-up. And like, okay, here's what we're doing. I'm going to walk you through all of it. And the athletes obviously get very accustomed to that. And one day I was just like, okay, here's what we're doing. Go warm up. I just wanted to see where my athletes were at. Like, could they just go put together some warm up in 10 minutes? And I wanted to see what it looked like. And it was a train wreck. Like, absolutely. Like, you get a handful of people that that can go and do it, but you don't realize exactly what you're saying, the level of dependency that we've created. And I get it. Some people are like, I just want to go to the gym. I just want somebody to tell me like what to do. I don't want to have to think about it. And that's real, but eventually I'm not going to be there. And you got to have some idea how to warm up for a squat.
And that's a debate for high level athletes too. You know, I look at it like, being at the games for 18 straight years, 90% of the time I'm at the games or at a regional or something, athletes need to be told what to do to warm up. And, you know, I feel like that is a debate issue where some people will want that. Some coaches say, oh, yeah, fuck yeah. But at some point, like, they know what to do. They know how to warm up, but they should understand their bodies and how to prepare themselves. And at that point, once you get to that level, in my opinion, that should become almost automatic, where it's something that they don't have to think about. They know the workout, they know how their body's feeling, they know what they need to do, and then they're not going to overdo it. Oh, and I've had some people there who have been completely dependent, where it's like they need to know what time to show up, what time to leave, where to eat, all that stuff in between. And I do it and I provide it, but at the same point, I'm like, man, like, I get it from a standpoint if you just want to show up, perform, you don't want to think about anything. But I was always me as an athlete, where I never needed a coach to tell me anything. To me, I'm almost like, just get the fuck away from me. Like when it hits, when, you know, the basketball horn goes off, I'm gonna be ready to go. You don't need to worry about me. Go sit on the fucking chair and fix your tie or something, you know? and that's what I try to do with like people I work with now, especially like I keep going back to my son because that's just the person I see the most. But with him too, when he's getting ready for basketball games or baseball games, I'm like, go get ready. You know, I don't say anything else. And I just sit back and I watch to see what he's doing. And I got to catch myself. Sometimes it'd be like, what? Like, I want to be like, why are you doing that? What are you doing? Or you need to be doing this. And I'm like, well, maybe he doesn't. Like, don't say anything. Like, let him just do his fucking thing and feel it out and know what he has to do to be ready. It's like, I can't keep projecting my thoughts on him. I think sometimes that's what coaches do, where they try to always project their opinions on people, but we need to make sure people have this autonomy no matter what stage they're in, to understanding how to prepare their bodies, what to do to get ready and be prepared to go. It's like sometimes I try to test my own self where I try not to warm up and I try and do shit because I'm like, that's real world, right? If I wake up and I got to go do something right away, I shouldn't have to have 20 minutes to get my fucking hips firing properly, right? I should be able to go out and fucking be able to do something, you know?
Okay, your real world. I know what you're thinking. You're like, if I got to wake up and fight somebody, I got to be able to do it. I know that's the exact story you're telling yourself.
But even like playing, like at 45, right? If I get challenged to like a one-on-one game.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, all right, cool, let's play. Like, I don't want to have 20 minutes to do side shuffles and high knees and get my shoulders prepared. I want to be able to like lace up my shoes and go. You know, it is what it is. I don't know. We got off track, but all right, let's get back on track. So going back to load management. So we talked about it from an affiliate standpoint. How are you addressing this? Let's go to an individualized standpoint.
Okay.
All right. Program design standpoint. Your program for people. How are you managing the load put on them?
We're children. Fucking children. It's always going to start with a conversation.
I'm the dude. I'm the guy that, like, if you leave a piece of paper laying around, I'm drawing a dick on it.
I was going to say, I was like, the amount of dicks that must have been drawn in hats with you growing up. Yeah. First, it comes down to a conversation, and that kind of sounds like a cop-out answer, but you can learn, especially if they're a higher level athlete, you can learn so much through a conversation and just a general program review. Like, talk to them what they were doing, with what they were doing, how did they feel, what kind of progress were they making, and like what was going on in their life. And that is realistically the first thing that should happen, because that's going to tell you, okay, we can continue on this trend. Like, they're comfortable from a volume standpoint and they can handle it. They can recover from it. Or if they're just like, I was beat down, I was burnt out, I had all these nagging injuries, all of this, you may know that it's either a improper structuring of volume or it was just too much volume. Like one or the other. Like, I don't always just default to it was too much volume. It could just be poorly written and you're just overloading joints day after day after day after day without any sort of time for recovery to just like get some general movement in and get it back, kind of work that tension out. So I think that's realistically what you have to look at. And then it comes down to how you're writing it. Like if you're just writing AMRAPs and you're just like AMRAP this, AMRAP that, da 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 da, and you're not actually looking at the totality of volume accumulated in that session, it makes it really hard to devise some sort of progressive load strategy to move them week to week to week to week. Right? Because more than time, it's about tissue tolerance. It's what can the tissue recover from and what can it adapt to. And if it can't, if you're layering too much of it on, that's when you start seeing overuse injuries.
Totally.
So that's usually how I've definitely evolved this over the years. And now I kind of, in my head, it just works for me. I give myself a number and I'm like, this is my session functional volume or weekly functional volume. And I have that number. So I know I'm not exceeding that number for X weeks. And I just change the density within it. So I'll start like really high set, low volume or low rep, and then kind of progress that over time to build, capacity within density, getting to bigger and bigger sets. And that has seemed to work really, really well from a progressive standpoint. But it's not always about just adding volume. Like you have to think bigger than just adding volume to create capacity.
Yeah. I heard three things from what you just said, and correct me if I misheard you. Number one, you got to have solid conversations with people because we can't assume they can do or withstand a certain thing no matter who they are. And I think that's one of the biggest issues people have is they start working with an athlete who has a big time background or big time current placing inside a sport, and then we assume just based off where they are and what they're doing that their training age is different than it is, and they're able to withstand a lot more things. And the better conversations that we have with people, the more effectively we can put together the proper amount of volume that they can sustain and intensity.
Well, I want to stop you right there. I mean, right there, that's a great point where you have to look at the sport itself. Like, yes, you have to be able to handle a certain amount of volume, but all of these athletes, more than likely, are already accumulating a huge amount of volume. And it's not about the amount of volume, it's how fast can you express the volume. So more times it's not. It's like we need to work on getting you to move faster than actually accumulating more volume if you're at that higher echelon of the sport.
Yeah. And I'll take it from even a different perspective, right? So we had someone that come in our facility today to start training. She is going into her sophomore year of college. She is a soccer superstar, full ride, University of Connecticut, goals to play professional soccer after college, started as a freshman for UConn, has been playing soccer. She's All-American in high school. She's legit, right? And you'd assume that this person can withstand a lot of work. Her goal is to improve her speed, her power work, not so much lifting. So right off the bat, it's like you get the understanding that they mostly do lifting at University of Connecticut within inside the strength training program. So she wants to work on plyometric and speed work. Her volume there of what she can sustain is going to be a lot lower than what you'd assume based off who she is, because her ability to withstand it from a tissue tolerance standpoint is probably lessened because they don't do a lot of it as is there. And then on top of that, she also travels to play on an elite travel team. They have practice 3 days a week. So that's a ton of running, right, on the feet, the arches, the Achilles, calves, hips, knees, upper back, stability work, and games throughout the weekend as well, right? So her ability to handle that is probably a lot less than what people think. And then you think about the work that they're putting in from a training and practice perspective. We got to make sure that we're going on to the next point, which I outlined, which was fatigue management, and understand that we're giving them time to recover, to adapt to the stimulus, which also means that the volume needed for her to see progress is going to be a lot less than what a lot of people assume, right? So if you don't have that initial conversation with somebody, you come in, you're like, oh, wow, full ride, D1 athlete, starter, trying to play pro overseas. Okay, we're loading up max amount of speed, agility, plyometric work we can, velocity-based training protocols with barbells, like let's go. You might smash this person, even though they come in and you look at them like this might be one of the fittest looking people I've ever seen in my life right off the bat. Right. So again, second point I heard from your conversation was fatigue management, understanding the athletes, how they can recover to help with their body's ability to adapt. And then the last part, which is extremely important, which would be a whole other podcast on itself, what I heard from you was exercise sequencing and pairing. Because I think that's where a lot of people who don't really understand principles of strength conditioning and various methods for individuals, where they get in trouble because they pair movements, dynamic contractions, or they sequence things in ways that aren't appropriate for that person based off where they are whether it's from a training age or just a block in general throughout the year. And that can create unnecessary wear and tear on joints, which can lead to injury or overtrain. And it might not be theoretically a lot of volume, but the way things are paired together creates more strain on the body and the joint and tissues and muscles, which can create more setbacks.
Yeah. When I am in a voluminous, I guess, timeline of training, I just think about how do I actually set this athlete up to express the highest quality of reps, right? Volume is just going to create a lot of fatigue. It's going to create a lot of technical breakdown, which is going to ingrain inefficiency. So before you get super complex with your movement pairings, maybe take a step back and be like, what can I actually do to draw fatigue away from the area? Let them build up a huge amount of volume in this one specific thing instead of compounding fatigue, adding something more complex to it. Let them build that functional base volume, and then over time, draw the volume back and add in more complex pairings with it, right? To like express the sport.
I love it. Great stuff.
I'm glad you don't think I'm an idiot, seeing that I work for you.
Anything else that we want to touch on for this topic?
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to say when it comes to volume and load, don't take too many too frequently. Give yourself a break, right? Like volume doesn't have to progress week to week. That's, I think, an important thing to understand.
You said don't take too many too frequently.
I know what I said. I know what I said. Yeah, but in all reality, as coaches, you don't need to increase the load every week, every session. I know that's a common thing that you're going to see in strength training manuals, right? Like every session has to be a little bit more stressful in general, and that's real, but that doesn't mean that stress just has to come from volume. There's other ways to manipulate. You just got to get a little bit creative and really reflect and ask yourself, how am I managing or manipulating stress session to session to session? And that's going to kind of take or pull back on a lot of those tissue tolerance, overuse injuries.
Love it. Great point to close it out with. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Bring this podcast to a close, big boy.
All right. That's another one in the books. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Our little discussion on load management. Check it out on the Coach RX podcast. Give it a like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Hit us up in the DMs. We have a mentorship dropping, cohort number 2, July 2nd. So we got some spots remaining there. If you haven't checked that out, check us out, conquerathlete.com. Hit us up on Instagram if you want some more information. You certainly won't regret it. You'll get more of this childlike rhetoric, banter within it, and we'll get you guys tuned up, ready to coach some athletes.
Love it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great day.
Until next week.